The rain started just as they lowered David's casket into the ground. I stood there in my black dress, the one I'd bought 3 days ago in a daze, moving through the department store like a ghost while the saleswoman spoke to me in soft, pitying tones, and watched the rain darken the mahogany wood. Someone handed me a white rose. I was supposed to throw it onto the casket, but my hand wouldn't move. 53 years old, and I was a widow. The word felt foreign in my mouth, like a language I'd never learned to speak. Widow. It sounded old, final, like the ending of a story I wasn't ready to finish. Diana. My sister Maureen's hand touched my elbow. It's time. I dropped the rose. It landed on the casket with a soft thud that felt too quiet for the moment, too insignificant. My husband of 28 years was in that box, and all I could offer was a flower that would rot within days. The mourners began to disperse, black umbrellas blooming across the cemetery like dark flowers. I remained frozen, staring at the hole in the ground that now contained the man who had shared my bed, my life, my dreams. David had died 4 days ago. Heart attack. Sudden. Complete. One moment he was laughing at something on his laptop in his home office, and the next moment I found him slumped over his desk, already gone. The paramedics said he probably didn't feel anything. They said it like it was supposed to be a comfort. Diana, honey, you're getting soaked. Maureen opened her umbrella over both of us. Let's go to the car. I let her guide me away, my heels sinking into the wet grass with each step. Behind us, the cemetery workers waited with their shovels, ready to fill in the grave as soon as we left. Such efficiency in death, such practiced routine. The funeral home had arranged a reception at our house. My house now, I supposed. Cars lined our street in the suburban Maryland neighborhood, where David and I had lived for 15 years. Our colonial-style home, with the blue shutters and the oak tree in the front yard, looked the same as always, but everything felt different. Wrong. Like a movie set designed to look like my life, but missing some essential element of reality. Inside, people I half recognized filled the living room. David's colleagues from the consulting firm. Neighbors. Church members we saw only on Christmas and Easter. They spoke in hushed tones, balanced plates of catered food, told me how sorry they were with variations on the same script. He was such a good man. If you need anything, time heals all wounds. I nodded and thanked them and felt nothing. David's phone was in my purse. I'd found it in his office the day he died, plugged into the charger beside his laptop. The police had asked if they needed to take it, but the medical examiner was satisfied it was a natural death. David had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, a family history of heart disease. No mystery, no investigation required. I'd meant to turn it off, but hadn't been able to make myself do it. Turning off his phone felt too final, too much like erasing him. So I'd charged it, slipped it into my purse, and tried not to think about it. But now, sitting on the couch in my own living room, surrounded by strangers, offering condolences, I felt it vibrate. Buzz. I froze, my hand instinctively moving to my purse. Diana? Maureen was beside me again, ever present, ever watchful. Do you want to lie down? You look pale. I'm fine. My voice sounded distant, mechanical. Buzz. There it was again. David's phone, receiving messages. From whom? Everyone who mattered was here at the reception. Or they'd already sent flowers, cards, messages to my phone. I just need a minute, I told Maureen, standing abruptly. I'll be right back. I escaped to the downstairs bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the closed toilet lid. With trembling hands, I pulled David's phone from my purse. The screen showed 3 new messages, all from the same number, a number not saved in his contacts, just 10 digits with a 703 area code. Virginia, Probably. Close by. I shouldn't look. David was dead. Whatever was on his phone, it couldn't matter now. I should respect his privacy, his memory. But my thumb was already moving, swiping to unlock the screen. David's passcode was our wedding anniversary, 0815. He'd never been creative with passwords. I used to tease him about it. The phone unlocked, and I opened his messages. The 3 new texts were all from that unknown number. 12:47 p.m. I saw the obituary. I can't believe he's gone. 1:03 p.m. I don't know if this is the right thing to do, but I need to talk to someone. There are things you should know. 1:15 p.m. Please. I know this is the worst possible time, but if you're reading these on David's phone, we need to meet. Today, if possible. I'll be at Riverside Park, near the fountain, at 3 p.m. I'll wait until 4. Please come. I read the messages 3 times, my brain struggling to process the words. There are things you should know. My hands started shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the phone. I scrolled up, looking at the previous messages in the thread. There were dozens of them, going back months, years, maybe. I'd have to scroll for a long time to find the beginning. I randomly selected a message from 2 weeks ago. David, missing you today. This trip is longer than usual. Can't wait to see you Friday. Unknown, missing you too. Be safe. Love you. Love you. My vision blurred. I blinked hard, forcing my eyes to focus, and scrolled to another message. This one from 3 months ago. Unknown. Doctor confirmed it today. Everything looks good. Due date is March 15th. David, that's amazing news. I wish I could have been there with you. Soon, I promise. We'll figure this out. Unknown. I know. I trust you. We have time. The bathroom walls seemed to be closing in. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Due date. Doctor. Baby. No. This couldn't be real. This had to be a mistake. Misunderstanding. Someone pranking a dead man's phone. I scrolled further back, my movements frantic now, desperate. 6 months ago. David, I know this is complicated. I know I'm asking so much of you. But I love you, Cassandra. I love you and I love our life together. And I'm going to make this right. I promise. Unknown, Cassandra. I love you too. And I believe you. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. Cassandra. Her name was Cassandra. And David, my husband of 28 years, the man whose body I just watched disappear into the ground, had loved her. The phone slipped from my hands and clattered onto the tile floor. I barely heard it. The rushing sound in my ears was too loud, drowning out everything else. A knock on the bathroom door. Diana, honey, are you okay in there? Maureen's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater, from another world entirely. I looked down at the phone on the floor. The screen was still lit up, still showing David's messages to a woman named Cassandra, a woman who was pregnant, a woman he'd told he loved. There are things you should know. The knock came again, more insistent. Diana, you're scaring me. Open the door. I picked up the phone with numb fingers, powered it off, finally, and shoved it back into my purse. Then I stood, flushed the toilet for sound effect, ran the water in the sink, and opened the door. Maureen stood there, with worry written across her face. Behind her, I could see our living room full of people eating finger sandwiches and speaking in respectful murmurs about my dead husband. I'm fine, I lied. Just needed a moment. You don't look fine. You look like you've seen a ghost. She had no idea how right she was. I glanced at my watch. 2:47 p.m. The woman, Cassandra, said she'd be at Riverside Park at 3:12 p.m. That was 13 minutes from now. The park was a 10-minute drive from here. Actually, I heard myself say, I think I need some air. Maybe a short drive. Is that crazy? Maureen frowned. Right now, Diana, you have a house full of people who are all here for him, not for me. The words came out sharper than I intended. I'm sorry. I need to get out of here for a few minutes. Can you cover for me? Tell them I'm resting upstairs. Diana. Please, Maureen. Please. Something in my voice must have convinced her. She studied my face for a long moment, then sighed. Okay, but take your phone, and if you're not back in an hour, I'm calling the police. Thank you. I grabbed my coat and keys and slipped out through the garage before anyone could stop me. My car, a silver Honda Accord that David had always said was too practical, too boring, started on the first try. I backed out of the driveway carefully, aware that my hands were still trembling, that my vision was still slightly blurred. I shouldn't be driving. I was in shock, grief-stricken, possibly about to have a complete breakdown. But I was also driving toward Riverside Park, toward a woman named Cassandra, who said there were things I should know about my dead husband. The rain had stopped, but the roads were still slick. I drove on autopilot, my mind replaying the messages over and over. Love you. Due date is March 15th. I love you, Cassandra. 28 years. We'd been married for 28 years. We'd met when I was 25, fresh out of nursing school, working at Georgetown University Hospital. David had been 27, just starting his career in management consulting. He'd come into the ER with a suspected broken wrist after a pickup basketball game gone wrong. It wasn't broken, just badly sprained. But he'd asked for my number before he left. Our first date was coffee that turned into dinner, that turned into walking around the city until 2 a.m., talking about everything and nothing. He'd kissed me on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and I'd known, absolutely known, that I was going to marry him. We had a small wedding, a beautiful honeymoon in Italy. We bought our first house, a tiny townhouse in Arlington. We talked about having children, but decided to wait. Wait for better jobs, better finances, better timing. And then 1 year became 2, became 5, became 10. And suddenly we were in our 40s, and the doctors were using words like geriatric pregnancy and increased risks, and we'd quietly stopped trying, stopped talking about it. We told ourselves we were happy, just the two of us. We traveled, we renovated houses, we built careers. David made partner at his firm 8 years ago. I'd moved into hospital administration, eventually becoming the director of patient services at Suburban Maryland Medical Center. We had money, success, a beautiful home, friends, a good life, or so I'd thought. The parking lot at Riverside Park was nearly empty. The rain had kept people away, and it was a Tuesday afternoon. Most people were at work or school. I parked near the entrance and sat in my car for a moment, trying to gather courage I wasn't sure I possessed. My phone showed 3:02 p.m. If Cassandra was here, she was waiting. I forced myself to get out of the car. The park was one of those carefully designed suburban spaces, paved walking paths, manicured grass, a small pond with a fountain in the center. Benches were scattered along the paths, most of them empty now, except one. Near the fountain, exactly where she'd said she'd be, sat a woman. She was young. That was my first thought. Much younger than me, maybe late 20s, early 30s at most. She had long, dark hair, pulled back in a ponytail, and even from a distance, I could see she was crying, and I could see, quite clearly, that she was pregnant, very pregnant, 6 or 7 months if I had to guess, based on my years of nursing experience. Due date, March 15th. That would make her about 7 months along now, in late September. My legs were moving before I made a conscious decision to approach her. She looked up as I got closer, and our eyes met. Hers widened in recognition, or maybe in fear. She stood up awkwardly, one hand supporting her swollen belly. "Mrs. Chen." Her voice was soft, trembling. "Diana, you're Cassandra." It wasn't a question. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know if you'd come. I didn't know if I should even reach out, but I—" Her voice broke. "There are things you need to know. Things David would want you to know." The sound of his name in her mouth made me flinch. "How long?" I asked. My voice sounded cold, detached. Good. I needed to stay detached right now, or I would fall apart completely. "How long were you with my husband?" Cassandra's face crumpled. 5 years. We were together for 5 years. 5 years. The number hit me like a physical blow. 5 years. While I was cooking dinner, going to bed beside him, planning our summer vacations, believing we were happy, he'd been with her for 5 years. And the baby, I had to ask, even though I already knew the answer. "She's David's." Cassandra's hand moved protectively over her stomach. "She's due in March, like I texted him. I'm keeping her. I wanted you to know that. And I wanted you to know." She stopped, struggling to find words. "I wanted you to know that David loved you. He never stopped loving you." A bitter laugh escaped my throat. He had an interesting way of showing it. "I know how it looks. I know." Cassandra sat back down on the bench heavily, as if her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. "Can we talk, please? I know you have every right to hate me, to tell me to go to hell, but there's so much you don't understand. So much David never got to explain. I should leave. I should walk away from this woman, this stranger who carried my husband's child, and never look back. I should go home, kick everyone out of my house, and break down in private like a dignified widow. But instead, I sat down beside her on the bench. "Talk," I said. "Explain to me how my husband, the man I just buried, had an entire secret life I knew nothing about." Cassandra took a shaky breath. "It started 5 years ago. David came to the company where I worked as a consultant. We were having problems with our HR systems, and his firm was brought in to help. I was the project coordinator." She twisted her hands in her lap, not meeting my eyes. "It wasn't immediate. We worked together for months before anything happened. He was so professional, so focused. But we'd have to work late sometimes, order dinner, talk about things beyond work. He told me about you, about your marriage. He didn't hide that he was married. He wore his ring, talked about you often." "How thoughtful," I said bitterly. Cassandra flinched, but continued. "I started having feelings for him. I tried to fight them. I knew it was wrong. But then one night, we were working late, and he broke down, started crying, said he felt like he was disappearing, like he'd spent his whole life becoming who everyone else needed him to be, and he didn't know who he actually was anymore." I stared at the fountain, watching water arc and fall, arc and fall. I felt like I was outside my body, listening to someone else's life story. We kissed that night, and then we started seeing each other, meeting for coffee, then lunch, then dinner. He'd tell you he was working late or traveling for business, and sometimes he was, but sometimes he was with me. 5 years, I repeated numbly. For 5 years, every time he said he was working late, every business trip, every conference. "Not every time," Cassandra interrupted quickly. "David really did work a lot. His job was demanding. But yes, sometimes he lied. Sometimes he came to my apartment instead of coming home to you. And she took a shuddering breath. I convinced myself it was okay because he loved me, because we were going to be together eventually. Were you? I turned to look at her fully for the first time. Was he going to leave me for you? Cassandra's face twisted with pain. He said he would. He said he was just waiting for the right time, waiting to figure out how to do it without hurting you. But the time never came. There was always a reason to wait. Your anniversary, the holidays, your mother getting sick last year, his promotion, something. The anger I'd been holding back started to surface, hot and sharp. So he was just going to keep both of us dangling forever, keep lying to both of us. No. Cassandra looked at me desperately. That's what I need to tell you. That's why I asked you to come. Because David did decide. Finally, he made a choice. My heart was pounding now. What choice? Cassandra reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. It was already open, and I could see papers inside. 3 weeks ago, David came to my apartment. He had these papers with him. Divorce papers. He'd already filed them. He said he was going to tell you that weekend. After his business trip to Chicago, he said he couldn't keep living a lie anymore, that he wanted to be with me and our daughter, that he was finally ready to make everything right. She handed me the envelope with shaking hands. I took it, feeling like I was in a dream. Inside were legal documents, a petition for divorce, filed with the state of Maryland. The petitioner was listed as David Robert Chen, the respondent, Diana Marie Chen. The filing date was 3 weeks ago, September 8th. David had filed for divorce 3 weeks ago, and I'd known nothing about it. He never told me, I whispered. He didn't get the chance. Cassandra's voice was thick with tears. He was going to tell you that Sunday, September 17th. He had it all planned. He was going to take you out to lunch, somewhere public, so you wouldn't be alone afterward. And he was going to explain everything. He was going to ask for forgiveness, even though he knew he didn't deserve it. He was going to tell you about me, about the baby, about the divorce papers. September 17th, 5 days ago, the day David had his heart attack. He died that morning, I said, the realization hitting me. Before he could tell me, Cassandra nodded miserably. I waited for him to call. When he didn't, I thought maybe he'd chickened out, or maybe you'd reacted badly, and he needed time. And then, on Monday, I saw his obituary online, and I realized she broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands. Her pregnant belly shook with each cry. I sat there beside her, holding divorce papers my husband had filed without my knowledge, and felt something inside me crack open. Not just grief anymore, not just betrayal, something bigger, more fundamental, like the entire foundation of my life had been revealed as fiction. Why did you want me to know? I finally asked, when Cassandra's sobs had quieted to hiccups. You could have just disappeared. Let me think I had a faithful husband. Why tell me all this now? Cassandra wiped her face with her sleeve. Because you deserve the truth, and because, she placed her hand on her stomach, because this baby is David's daughter, your husband's daughter. She deserves to know who her father was, and you deserve to know that you existed, that she exists. His daughter. I stared at Cassandra's belly, at the place where David's child was growing, a child he'd never meet. A child I'd never known about until 20 minutes ago. I'm naming her Grace, Cassandra said softly. Grace May Chen. David picked the name. He wanted her to have his last name, even though we weren't married. He said he wanted her to know she was his, that she was wanted, that she was loved. Grace. David's daughter, Grace. I stood up abruptly, unable to sit still any longer. I need to go. Cassandra stood too, awkwardly. Wait, Please. I know this is overwhelming. I know you must hate me. But I need to know." She swallowed hard. "What are you going to do with the information I gave you? Will you contest the divorce? It was filed but never finalized. So technically, your marriage was still valid when he died, which means I'm still his legal widow," I finished. "Which means I inherit everything. His life insurance, his retirement accounts, his share of our house and our investments." Cassandra's face went pale. "I wasn't asking about money. Weren't you?" The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. "You're about to be a single mother, Cassandra. David promised you he'd leave me, and now he's dead. So yes, I imagine money is very much on your mind, even if you don't want to admit it. That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, and it sounded slightly unhinged, even to my own ears. "You want to talk about fair? You had an affair with my husband for 5 years. You're carrying his child. He filed for divorce without telling me. And now you've shown up at his funeral to tell me all of this, and you want to talk about fair?" Cassandra's eyes filled with tears again. "You're right. None of this is fair. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't change anything, but I am." I clutched the envelope with the divorce papers, my knuckles white. "I need to go. I need to think. I need to—" My voice cracked. "I need to process this. Can I give you my number, in case you want to talk, or if you have questions, or—" "You already gave it to me. You texted David's phone, remember?" "Right." Cassandra wrapped her arms around herself, looking lost and young and scared. "Diana, I know you don't believe me, but David really did love you. He talked about you all the time. He said you were the best person he knew, the strongest, the kindest. He said leaving you was the hardest thing he'd ever have to do. But he had to do it, because staying would be lying. And you deserved better than a husband who was living a lie. Stop." I held up my hand. "Stop talking about what David said, what David felt, what David wanted. He's dead. None of it matters now. It matters to Grace. When she's old enough to ask about her father, it's going to matter. Grace, David's daughter, my husband's child, with another woman." I turned and walked away before I said something I'd regret, before I screamed, before I fell apart completely in front of this stranger who knew my husband in ways I apparently never had. I made it to my car, locked myself inside, and sat there in the parking lot with my head on the steering wheel. The divorce papers were still clutched in my hand, their edges crumpling. My phone buzzed. A text from Maureen. "Where are you? People are starting to leave. Are you okay?" Was I okay? My husband had been having an affair for 5 years. He'd gotten his mistress pregnant. He'd filed for divorce without telling me. He'd planned to destroy our entire life together. And he died before he could do it. No, I was not okay. I was the furthest thing from okay I'd ever been in my entire life. But I couldn't fall apart yet. There were still people at my house, at our house, at David's house. I didn't even know what to call it anymore. There were still casseroles in the refrigerator, and sympathy cards on the mantel, and decisions to be made about thank you notes and obituaries, and all the mundane details of death that no one warns you about. I texted Maureen back. "On my way. Sorry. Needed air." Then I started the car and drove home, the divorce papers in the passenger seat beside me, like a ghost. I made it through the rest of the reception on autopilot. I smiled and nodded and accepted condolences and pretended I was a grieving widow instead of a woman whose entire life had just been revealed as a carefully constructed lie. By 6 p.m., everyone had left except Maureen. She insisted on staying, on helping me clean up, on making sure I ate something. I let her bustle around my kitchen, wrapping leftover food, loading the dishwasher, talking in a gentle stream about nothing important. "You should try to sleep," she finally said around 8 p.m. "You look exhausted." "I am." That much was true. "Do you want me to stay tonight? I can sleep in the guest room." "No." I softened my tone. "Thank you. But I need some time alone. I need to process everything." Maureen hugged me tightly. "Call me if you need anything. Anything at all. I mean it, Diana. Even if it's 3 a.m. and you just need to talk. I will. Thank you for everything today." After she left, I stood in my silent house and felt the weight of solitude settle over me like a heavy blanket. For 28 years, this house had contained 2 people. Now it contained only 1. Except that wasn't quite true, was it? Because David had never really been here. Not entirely. Part of him had been with Cassandra, in her apartment, in her bed, in her life. I walked upstairs to David's office, the room where I'd found him dead, slumped over his desk. The cleaning company I'd hired had already been through, removing any trace of that day. The desk was clear, his chair pushed in neatly. It looked like he might walk in at any moment and power up his laptop to work. His laptop. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I sat down in his chair, opened the laptop, and pressed the power button. The login screen appeared. David Chen. The password field was empty, cursor blinking. I tried our anniversary. 08151995. Invalid password. I tried his birthday. 0322968. Invalid. I tried my birthday. Invalid. I sat back, thinking. David had always been terrible with passwords. Always used the same few combinations. What else would he use? On impulse, I tried. Cassandra. Invalid. Grace. Invalid. Then I remembered something. Years ago, when we first moved into this house, David had joked that the street address would make a good password because it was easy to remember, but not obvious. Our address was 847. I typed Chen 847. The computer unlocked. His desktop was organized and professional. Folders labeled with project names. A few shortcuts to commonly used programs. Nothing obviously incriminating. But I hadn't expected it to be obvious. David was smart, careful. If he'd been hiding an affair for 5 years, he wouldn't leave evidence lying around in plain sight. I opened his email first. The inbox was mostly work-related. Client communications, internal memos, spam that had slipped through filters. I scrolled back through months of messages, looking for anything that didn't fit. Then I saw it, an email folder titled Personal Archive. I clicked on it. Inside were hundreds of emails, all from one address, cassandra.winterogmail.com. I clicked on the most recent one, dated September 15th, 2 days before David died. Subject, Sunday. David, I know you're nervous about this weekend. I am too. But I also know it's the right thing. You've been carrying this weight for so long, and it's time to put it down. Whatever happens with Diana, whatever she says or does, I want you to know that I'll be here. Grace and I will be here. We're your family now, and we'll get through this together. I love you. I believe in you. And I'm so proud of you for finally being brave enough to choose the life you want instead of the life you think you should have. See you Monday night, love. See, I read it 3 times, each word like a small knife. We're your family now. The life you want instead of the life you think you should have. Had I been the life David thought he should have? Had our entire marriage been an obligation to him, a duty, performed out of convention rather than genuine love? I clicked on another email, this one from 6 months ago. Subject, I felt her move. David, she kicked. I felt Grace kick for the first time. And oh my God, it's the most amazing thing I've ever experienced. She's so strong already, just like her daddy. I wish you could have been here to feel it too. I know you're stuck in Philadelphia for the conference, but I recorded a video of it. Well, of my belly moving. It looks kind of weird on video, but you'll see what I mean. I can't wait until March. I can't wait for you to meet her, to hold her, to be the father I know you're going to be. She's so lucky to have you. Love you so much, C. The father I know you're going to be. David had been excited about this baby. He'd wanted to be a father. After all our years of telling ourselves we didn't need children, that we were happy, just the two of us. He'd wanted to be a father, just not with me. I kept reading, going back further. 3 years ago. Subject, re. What now? Cassandra, I've been thinking about what you said last night. You're right that we can't keep doing this forever. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to Diana. I need to make a choice, but I need you to understand how complicated this is. Diana and I have been together for 25 years. We've built an entire life together. Our finances are intertwined. Our friends are shared. Her whole family is my family. If I leave, I'm not just leaving her. I'm leaving everything I've known for most of my adult life. I'm not saying this to hurt you or to make excuses. I'm just trying to explain why I'm paralyzed. I love you. I want a future with you. But I also can't imagine the devastation my leaving would cause to someone who's never done anything to deserve it. Please be patient with me. Please don't give me an ultimatum. I promise I'm trying to figure this out. I love you, Dee. Please be patient with me. For 5 years, Cassandra had been patient. For 5 years, she'd waited while David agonized over leaving me. And then, finally, he'd filed for divorce and died before he could deliver the news. I closed the laptop, unable to read anymore. My hands were shaking again, and my head was pounding. I felt like I was drowning in information, in secrets, in the wreckage of a marriage I'd thought was solid. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hi, Diana. This is Cassandra. I saved your number from when you called David's phone earlier. I'm sorry to bother you tonight, but I wanted to make sure you got home safely, and I wanted to say again how sorry I am for everything. If you want to talk, or if you have questions, please reach out. I'll answer anything honestly. I stared at the message. Part of me wanted to block her number, to never hear from her again, but another part of me, the part that needed to know everything, that couldn't rest until I understood the full scope of David's betrayal, wanted to ask her 1,000 questions. Instead, I typed, "Did you love him?" The response came quickly. "Yes, very much." Me. "Did he love you?" Cassandra. "He said he did, and I believed him. I still do." Me. "Were there others? Before you? Or during you?" A longer pause this time. Then, "No. He swore I was the only one, and I believe that too. David wasn't a player or a serial cheater. He was just a man who fell in love with someone who wasn't his wife. Simple. Clean. As if that made it better, somehow." Me. "I found his emails. All of them." Cassandra. "I'm sorry. That must have been awful to read." Me. "Why didn't you leave him? Why did you stay with a married man for 5 years? The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, because I loved him. Because he promised he would leave eventually. Because I believed him when he said he was just waiting for the right time. And because I was a fool who thought love conquered all, but also because he made me happy. Even with the lying and the hiding and the stolen moments, he made me happier than anyone else ever had. Is that selfish? Yes. Is that wrong? Probably. But it's the truth. I set the phone down without responding. I didn't know what to say. Part of me hated Cassandra for taking my husband, but another part of me almost understood, almost sympathized, almost. I spent the rest of the night going through David's office like a detective. I found bank statements showing regular cash withdrawals, $500 here, $800 there, always in round numbers, money that had never been accounted for in our joint budget discussions. I found credit card statements for a card I'd never seen before, one he must have kept separate from our joint accounts. The charges told a story. Dinners at romantic restaurants I'd never been to, hotel rooms in cities where he'd told me he was attending conferences, jewelry purchases from stores I didn't recognize. In the back of his desk drawer, hidden behind files of old tax returns, I found a small velvet box. Inside was a ring. Not a wedding band, but a delicate diamond ring, the kind you'd give someone to show commitment without the formality of marriage. Had he given this to Cassandra, or was he planning to? By 3 a.m., I'd compiled a mental inventory of David's double life. 5 years of affair, hundreds of emails and text messages, a separate credit card with charges totaling tens of thousands of dollars, regular cash withdrawals, a pregnant mistress, filed divorce papers, a planned confession that never happened, and through it all, I'd suspected nothing. Not once in 5 years had I questioned where David was or what he was doing. I'd trusted him completely. What did that say about me? Was I naive, willfully blind, or had David simply been that good at lying? I finally went to bed around 4 a.m., but I didn't sleep. I lay in the bed I'd shared with David, with his ghost, apparently, since he'd never really been fully present, and stared at the ceiling until dawn. Morning came too bright and too early. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My eyes were swollen from crying. My head pounded, and my body ached with exhaustion. But I couldn't rest. Not yet. Not until I knew everything. I called in sick to work. Not difficult since my boss had already told me to take as much time as I needed after David's death. Then I made coffee, strong and black, and returned to David's office. There had to be more. 5 years of an affair doesn't happen in a vacuum. There had to be other signs, other clues I'd missed. I opened his laptop again and went through his browsing history. Most of it was mundane. Work sites, news, weather. But then I found something interesting. Frequent visits to a real estate website, specifically looking at condos in Alexandria, Virginia. I clicked on his saved properties. There were a dozen of them, all 2-bedroom condos, all in the same neighborhood, all saved within the last 6 months. He'd been planning to move, to leave me, and move in with Cassandra and their baby. My phone rang. "Maureen, how are you holding up?" she asked, without preamble. "Fine," I lied automatically. "Diana, you sound terrible. Did you sleep at all?" "Not much. I'm coming over. I'll bring lunch." "No," I said it too sharply. "I mean, thank you, but I need some time alone. I'm still processing everything." "Processing what? The funeral?" "Honey, grief is normal. You don't have to process it alone." "Maureen, I really need to go. I'll call you later, okay?" I hung up before she could argue, feeling guilty but desperate for solitude. I couldn't have her here, asking questions, being supportive, when I was sitting in my dead husband's office, uncovering evidence of his betrayal. I turned back to the laptop. In his documents folder, I found something I'd missed before, a folder titled Legal Personal. Inside were copies of the divorce papers Cassandra had shown me. But there was more. A custody agreement draft for child known as Grace May Chen, born on or around March 15, 2024. He'd been planning custody arrangements before the baby was even born. There was also a proposed division of assets. I read through it with growing horror. House, to be sold, proceeds split 50-50 joint savings and checking. split 50-50 David's 401k and retirement accounts. To remain with Diana's 401k and retirement accounts. To remain with David's life insurance. Beneficiary to be changed to Grace May Chen, daughter. He'd planned to change his life insurance beneficiary to a baby who wasn't even born yet. To cut me out entirely. I felt sick. Actually, physically sick. I barely made it to the bathroom before I threw up the coffee I'd just drunk. When I could stand again, I washed my face and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked old, haggard, like I'd aged 10 years overnight. Who was this woman staring back at me? I didn't recognize her. The Diana I knew had been confident, successful, happily married. This Diana was a fool who'd been living in a fantasy while her husband planned his escape. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Cassandra. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to let you know that I'm meeting with a lawyer today about Grace's legal status and David's estate. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I just want to make sure Grace has what her father would have wanted her to have. Rage, hot and immediate, flooded through me. I called her number before I could think better of it. She answered on the first ring. Diana, you have some nerve, I said, my voice shaking. David has been dead for 4 days, and you're already meeting with lawyers about his money? It's not about money. The hell it isn't. I found David's proposed divorce settlement. I saw where he planned to change his life insurance beneficiary to your baby. You were going to get everything. I didn't ask him to do that. He insisted. Of course he did. Because you were pregnant with his child. Because he loved you. I spat the words like poison. But here's the thing, Cassandra. He never actually filed those changes. He never actually divorced me, which means I'm still his legal wife. I'm still his beneficiary. And your baby, Grace, she has no legal claim to anything. Silence on the other end of the line. I'm not trying to hurt you, Cassandra finally said, her voice small. Or Grace. I'm just trying to understand what happens now. What happens now is that you go away. You disappear. You don't contact me again. You don't make claims on David's estate. And you raise your daughter as a single mother, just like you would have if David had lived long enough to divorce me. Diana, please, don't Diana please me. You don't get to be the victim here. You slept with my husband. You had his baby. You tried to steal my life. And now you want me to feel sorry for you? To make sure you're taken care of? I don't want your pity. Cassandra's voice rose, defensive now. I loved David. He loved me. We were going to be a family. The only reason we're not is because he died. That's not my fault, and it's not Grace's fault either. No, it's David's fault. For being a liar and a cheater. For making promises to both of us that he couldn't keep. For dying before he could face the consequences of his choices. He was going to face them. He filed for divorce. He was going to tell you everything. But he didn't. He died instead. And now I'm left to deal with the wreckage of his lies while you get to play the grieving girlfriend. Cassandra was crying now. I could hear it in her voice. I am grieving. I lost the man I love. Grace lost her father before she even got to meet him. We're victims in this too. You're not a victim. You're an accomplice. You knew he was married. You knew what you were doing. You think I don't know that? You think I don't hate myself for it? I do. I hate that I fell in love with a married man. I hate that I let him keep me a secret for 5 years. I hate that I got pregnant and complicated everything even more. But I can't change any of it now. None of us can. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the rage coursing through me. You're right. We can't change it. But we can move forward. And moving forward means you staying out of my life. What about Grace? She's David's daughter. She deserves to know who her father was. She can know when she's 18, when she's an adult, and can make her own decisions. But right now, she's not even born yet, and I don't owe her anything. I don't owe you anything. Diana, I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to set the phone down. I felt like I was losing my mind. One part of me wanted to hurt Cassandra the way she'd hurt me. Another part felt guilty for taking my anger out on a pregnant woman. And another part, the part I didn't want to acknowledge, wondered if she was right. If Grace deserved to know her father, even if that father had been a cheating liar. I needed advice. I needed someone who could be objective, who could help me think through this rationally. I called Jennifer Park, the attorney who'd handled David's estate planning. Diana, I'm so sorry about David, she said when she answered. I was planning to reach out next week about the estate proceedings. But if you need to talk sooner, I need to talk now. Can I come to your office? Of course. I have an opening at 2 p.m. I'll be there at noon. Please, it's urgent. Jennifer must have heard the desperation in my voice, because she agreed immediately. I showered, put on clothes that made me look more human, and drove to Jennifer's office in downtown Bethesda. The whole way there, I rehearsed what I was going to say, how I was going to explain that my husband's secret life had just exploded in my face. Jennifer's office was calm and professional, exactly what I needed. She ushered me into her private office, closed the door, and handed me a bottle of water before sitting down across from me. What's going on, Diana? You look like you haven't slept in days. I haven't. I took a sip of water, gathering courage. Jennifer, I need to tell you something about David. Something I just found out yesterday. Okay, so I told her. All of it. The texts on David's phone, meeting Cassandra, the pregnancy, the 5-year affair, the divorce papers, the emails and bank statements and secret credit card. Jennifer listened without interrupting, her expression growing more concerned as I spoke. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and let out a long breath. Oh, Diana, I'm so sorry. This is a lot to process, on top of losing your husband. I need to know where I stand legally. Cassandra says she's meeting with a lawyer. She wants to make sure Grace, the baby, has access to David's estate. Jennifer pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. Okay, let's think through this step by step. First, you were legally married to David when he died, correct? Yes. He filed for divorce, but never served me the papers. I didn't even know about it until yesterday. So the divorce was never finalized, which means you're his legal widow and primary beneficiary. His will, his life insurance, his retirement accounts, all of that comes to you, unless he specifically changed the beneficiaries before his death. He was planning to change them. I found documents showing he wanted to make Grace the beneficiary of his life insurance. But did he actually file those changes with the insurance company? I don't know. Jennifer made a note. We'll need to verify that. But if he didn't actually file the paperwork, then you're still the beneficiary. Intentions don't matter in probate law. Only legal documents that were properly executed. So, Cassandra and Grace have no claim? Not necessarily. There's something called a posthumous child claim. If David acknowledged paternity, either in writing or through DNA evidence, then Grace could potentially have a claim to part of his estate as his biological child. My stomach dropped. How much? It varies by state. But in Maryland, children are typically entitled to inherit, even if the parents weren't married. If Grace can prove David is her father, she'd likely be entitled to a share of his estate, equal to what a legitimate child would receive. But I'm his wife, and you'd receive the spousal share. But children have rights too, Diana. The law doesn't distinguish between children born in wedlock and children born outside of it when it comes to inheritance. I felt like the walls were closing in. So even though David was cheating on me, even though he lied to me for years, his illegitimate child still gets his money. Jennifer's voice was gentle. The law tries to protect children, who are innocent parties in adult mistakes. Grace didn't choose to be born from an affair. She didn't choose any of this. Neither did I. I know, and I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just telling you what the law says. I put my head in my hands. This is a nightmare. Diana, look at me. I lifted my head. Jennifer's expression was kind, but firm. I know this is overwhelming, but before we make any decisions or take any actions, we need to gather information. We need to find out if David actually changed any beneficiaries. We need to determine the value of his estate. We need to see if there are any documents acknowledging Grace's paternity. The emails do. He calls her our daughter in multiple emails. Then it's likely that Grace would be considered his child, legally, which means we need to start thinking about negotiation rather than confrontation. Negotiation with the woman who destroyed my marriage? Negotiation with the mother of your late husband's child. Like it or not, Diana, you and Cassandra are now connected. David's choices, however terrible, created that connection. And the question now is, how do you both move forward in a way that's legal, ethical, and causes the least amount of additional pain? I didn't want to negotiate. I wanted to rage. I wanted to hurt someone the way I'd been hurt. I wanted justice, or revenge, or at least some acknowledgement that what happened to me was wrong. But Jennifer was right. Acting out of anger would only make things worse. What do? I asked, feeling defeated. First, we need to gather all the documentation. David's will, his beneficiary designations, his financial accounts, everything. Then we need to get a full picture of his estate value. Once we know what we're dealing with, we can decide how to proceed. And Cassandra? You don't have to talk to her if you don't want to. But eventually, probably sooner rather than later, we'll need to communicate about Grace's paternity and potential claims. It would be better to do that cooperatively rather than through hostile litigation. Cooperate with the woman who'd been sleeping with my husband. The idea made me want to scream. But what choice did I have? Over the next week, I became an expert in David's finances. Jennifer requested documents from every institution: banks, investment firms, insurance companies. I went through every file in David's office, every statement, every piece of paper. The picture that emerged was complex. David had been more financially savvy than I'd realized. He had accounts I didn't know about, investments he'd never mentioned. Some of them were legitimate. Old 401ks from previous employers, a small inheritance from his father that he'd invested. Others were suspicious. Cash accounts with regular deposits, investment accounts opened in the last 5 years. The total value of his estate, according to Jennifer's calculations, was approximately $2.3 million. That included his life insurance policy, $750,000, his retirement accounts, $800,000, our joint assets, $500,000, and various other accounts and investments, $250,000. If Grace was legally recognized as David's daughter, she would be entitled to a portion of that estate. Exactly how much would depend on Maryland law, and whether David's will specifically excluded any unnamed children. I pulled out David's will, which we'd had drafted 5 years ago when we'd updated our estate planning. I'd never looked at it closely before. We'd both assumed we had years ahead of us to worry about such things. The will was straightforward. Everything to me if David died first, everything to him if I died first. There was a clause about charitable donations, another about personal effects, and then, at the bottom of page 3, a clause I'd never noticed. Any children born or conceived during the lifetime of the testator, whether legitimate or illegitimate, shall be entitled to inherit according to the laws of the state of Maryland, unless specifically disinherited by name in a subsequent codicil to this will. I read it 3 times, my heart sinking each time. David had included a clause protecting any children he might have, including children born outside our marriage. Had he been planning this even 5 years ago? Or was this just standard legal language that suddenly, horribly, had become relevant? I called Jennifer. I found something in the will, a clause about children, including illegitimate ones. Read it to me. I did. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. That's actually fairly standard language, designed to prevent children from being accidentally disinherited. But it does mean that if Grace can prove David is her father, she has a clear, legal right to inherit. How much? In Maryland, if there's a surviving spouse and one child, the spouse typically gets the first $40,000 of the estate, plus half of the remainder. The child gets the other half. I did the math in my head. So, out of $2.3 million, I'd get $40,000 plus half of $2,260,000. That's about $117 million, and Grace would get the other $113 million. Approximately? Yes. Though some assets might not be divisible that way. The life insurance, for example, goes to whoever is listed as beneficiary. We need to check if David changed that. And if he did, then Grace gets the full $750,000 from the life insurance policy, and you split the rest of the estate with her. I felt like I might be sick again. Jennifer, I can't do this. I can't just hand over half of everything David and I built together to his mistress's child. It's not your choice, Diana. It's what the law requires. Then we fight it. We prove that Grace isn't David's daughter. We demand a paternity test. Cassandra has already offered to do a paternity test. She emailed my office yesterday. I froze. She contacted you? Yes. She said she hired an attorney who advised her to reach out to me directly, rather than communicating through you. She wants to establish Grace's paternity and claim formally, but she's willing to do it cooperatively, rather than through litigation. How magnanimous of her. Jennifer sighed. Diana, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But Cassandra isn't trying to be difficult. She's actually being quite reasonable. Reasonable? She's demanding half of my money. She's ensuring her daughter receives what she's legally entitled to. There's a difference. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't, because deep down, I knew Jennifer was right. This wasn't about Cassandra being greedy or vindictive. This was about a child, an innocent child who hadn't asked to be born into this mess, having the same legal rights as any other child. What happens next? I asked, exhausted. We verify David's beneficiary designations. We wait for Grace to be born and for the paternity test to be completed. And then we negotiate a settlement that honors both the law and the reality of this situation. When is she due again? March 15th, about 5.5 months from now. 5.5 months of limbo. 5.5 months of knowing my husband's mistress was carrying his child. 5.5 months of waiting to find out exactly how much of my life I'd be forced to hand over. I ended the call with Jennifer and sat in David's office, surrounded by evidence of his double life, and wondered how everything had gone so wrong. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, who lived in Florida with her new husband. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry I couldn't make it to the funeral. My hip surgery recovery is taking longer than expected. How are you holding up? Are you eating? Sleeping? Do you need me to come up there? My mother. I hadn't even thought about how to tell her about David's affair, about Cassandra, about any of this. She'd loved David like a son. The news would devastate her. I texted back, "I'm okay, Mom. Don't worry about me. Focus on recovering. Love you." Then I turned off my phone before she could call and ask questions I couldn't answer. That night, I did something I hadn't done since high school. I got drunk, properly drunk. I found a bottle of expensive scotch David had been saving for a special occasion and worked my way through half of it while sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by photo albums, our wedding photos, smiling, young, so hopeful. David in his tuxedo, me in my white dress, both of us looking like we just won the lottery. Had he loved me then? Really loved me? Or had even that been an illusion? Vacation photos. Italy, Greece, Hawaii, Costa Rica. All the places we traveled together, smiling in front of landmarks and beaches. Had he wished Cassandra was there instead? Had he been thinking of her while posing with his arm around me? Holiday photos. Christmas mornings, Thanksgivings, birthdays. A whole life documented in images. A whole marriage that I'd thought was real. I was on my third scotch when my doorbell rang. I ignored it, but it rang again, followed by knocking. "Diana, I know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway. Open up." Maureen. I considered hiding, pretending I wasn't home, but she'd just keep knocking. Might even call the police if she got worried enough. I stumbled to the door and opened it. Maureen took one look at me, disheveled, drunk, holding a glass of scotch, and her expression shifted from concern to alarm. "Oh, honey." She stepped inside and took the glass from my hand. "What's going on?" "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." The words came out slurred. Maureen guided me to the couch and sat me down. "Diana, you're scaring me. I know you're grieving, but this isn't like you. Talk to me. What's happened?" And suddenly, I couldn't hold it in anymore. The story poured out. David's affair, Cassandra, the pregnancy, the divorce papers, the emails, the money, all of it. I told her everything while crying so hard I could barely breathe. Maureen listened with growing horror, her arm around my shoulders, occasionally handing me tissues from the box she'd grabbed from the coffee table. When I finally finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That bastard," she finally said, her voice shaking with fury. "That absolute bastard." "Don't," I said. "Don't speak ill of the dead." "Why not? He lied to you for 5 years. He got another woman pregnant. He was planning to divorce you and leave you with nothing." "Not nothing. Half. Maryland law says—" "I don't care what Maryland law says. You were his wife. You stood by him for 28 years. You deserve more than half." I laughed bitterly. Apparently, I deserve exactly what the law says I deserve. No more, no less. Maureen stood up and started pacing. "We need to fight this. We need to find a way to contest the paternity, or the will, or something. There has to be a loophole." "There isn't. Jennifer already checked. If Grace is David's daughter, which she is, then she has the same inheritance rights as any other child. But she's illegitimate. The law doesn't care. Illegitimate children have the same rights as legitimate ones, which I actually agree with, in principle. Children shouldn't be punished for their parents' mistakes." Maureen stopped pacing and stared at me. "How are you being so rational about this? Because being irrational won't change anything. Trust me, I've tried. I've screamed and cried and raged at the universe. It doesn't help. So what? You're just going to accept this? Hand over half of everything to David's mistress and her baby? What choice do I have? Maureen sat back down and took my hand. I don't know, but there has to be something. Some way to protect yourself. We sat in silence for a while. Then, Maureen asked quietly, "Have you told anyone else? Your mother? David's family?" David's family. I hadn't even thought about them. His mother had died years ago, but he had 2 siblings, a brother in California and a sister in North Carolina. They'd both been at the funeral, had offered their condolences, had promised to stay in touch. They had no idea their brother had been living a double life. "I haven't told anyone," I said. "I don't know how. What do I say?" "Hi, your brother was a cheating liar who died before he could destroy our marriage. But don't worry. His pregnant mistress is here to pick up where he left off. You don't have to tell them everything. You could just keep it private until Grace is born and starts making claims on the estate, until there's a paternity test and legal proceedings. It's going to come out eventually, Maureen. I can't hide it forever. Maybe you can't hide it, but you can control the narrative. You can tell people the truth on your terms, before gossip and rumors start spreading." She had a point, but the thought of having those conversations, of watching people's faces when they learned what David had done, of enduring their pity and shock, felt overwhelming. "I need time," I said. "I need to process this myself before I can explain it to other people." "Okay, but Diana," Maureen squeezed my hand, "you're not alone in this. Whatever happens, whatever you need, I'm here. We'll get through this together." I leaned against my sister and let her hold me while I cried. Again, I seemed to be doing a lot of crying lately. After Maureen left, after she'd made me eat something, drink water, and promised to call her in the morning, I went back to David's office one more time. There was one thing I hadn't looked at yet, one place I'd been avoiding. David's personal email, the one he used for family and friends, separate from his work email and his secret email with Cassandra. I opened it, not knowing what I was looking for. Most of it was mundane. Emails from his siblings, from old college friends, from the gym about membership renewals. Nothing interesting. But then I saw an email from 3 months ago, sent to David's brother, Michael. The subject line was, "I need advice." I opened it. "Mike, I know we don't talk about serious stuff much, but I'm in a situation and I don't know who else to ask. You're the only person I trust not to judge me. I've been having an affair for 5 years now with a woman named Cassandra, and she's pregnant. Before you say anything, I know how terrible this sounds. I know I'm a terrible person, but I need you to understand. I didn't plan for this to happen. I love Diana. I've always loved Diana, but somewhere along the way, I fell in love with Cassandra, too. And now I'm trapped between 2 lives, 2 loves, 2 versions of myself. Cassandra is due in March. I can't keep lying to Diana. I can't keep living this double life. But I also can't imagine hurting her by telling her the truth. She doesn't deserve any of this. I've filed for divorce. I'm planning to tell Diana everything after my Chicago trip next month. I'm terrified. I'm ashamed. I'm prepared for her to hate me. But I also know it's the right thing to do. The only thing to do. I guess I'm writing this because I need someone to know. In case I lose my nerve. In case I can't go through with it. At least someone will know the truth. Can we talk? Call me when you have time. David. I stared at the email, my mind reeling. David had told his brother. Michael had known about the affair, about Cassandra, about the pregnancy. And Michael had never said a word to me. Not at the funeral. Not when he'd hugged me and told me how sorry he was for my loss. Not when he'd promised to check on me in a few weeks. He'd known, and he'd let me grieve for a husband who didn't exist. I scrolled down to see if Michael had responded. He had. David, man, I don't even know what to say. This is heavy, really heavy. I'm not going to tell you what to do, because honestly, I don't know what the right answer is here. This is above my pay grade. But I will say this. Whatever you decide, you need to commit to it fully. If you're going to stay with Diana, then you need to end things with Cassandra completely and never look back. If you're going to leave Diana for Cassandra, then you need to do it with honesty and compassion. The worst thing you can do is keep straddling both worlds, lying to both women, pretending you can have it all. That's not fair to anyone, especially not to that baby. You're my brother, and I love you, but I can't pretend this is okay. You made bad choices, and now you have to face the consequences. Whatever those consequences are, call me if you need to talk more. But ultimately, you know what you have to do. You just have to find the courage to do it. Mike. I read both emails 3 times, feeling betrayed all over again, not just by David, but by Michael, by the conspiracy of silence that had protected David's lies. It was midnight, but I didn't care. I called Michael. He answered groggily. "Hello." "You knew," I said without preamble. "You knew about Cassandra. David told you 3 months ago." A long pause. Then, "Diana. Oh God, Diana, I'm so sorry. You were at his funeral. You hugged me. You told me you were there for me if I needed anything. And the whole time, you knew he'd been cheating on me. You knew he was leaving me for another woman." I didn't know what to say. He asked me not to tell you. He said he wanted to be the one. He's dead, Michael. He can't tell me anything. But you could have. You could have warned me. You could have prepared me. Instead, I found out by reading texts on his phone at his own funeral. I know, and I'm sorry. I didn't think. No, you didn't think. You protected your brother. You let me believe he was faithful, that our marriage was real, that I knew the man I was married to. And all of it was a lie that you helped maintain. Diana, please. Did his sister know too? Did everyone in your family know what David was doing? No. God, no. Just me. He only told me because he needed advice. And what advice did you give him? From your email, it sounds like you told him to follow his heart, to leave me for his pregnant mistress. That's not what I said. I told him to make a choice and stick with it. I told him he couldn't keep lying. But he did keep lying. Right up until the moment he died. And you let him. Michael's voice broke. What was I supposed to do, Diana? He was my brother. He came to me in confidence. I couldn't betray that. But you could betray me? I'm your sister-in-law, Michael. I've been part of your family for nearly 30 years. Doesn't that count for anything? Of course it does. You have no idea how much I've been struggling with this. When he died, I didn't know what to do. I wanted to tell you, but I also didn't want to destroy your memory of him. My memory of him was already destroyed the moment I saw those texts. You didn't protect me from anything. You just left me to discover it in the worst possible way. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. If I could go back and do it differently. But you can't. None of us can. I felt exhausted suddenly, drained of anger. Does your sister know? No. No one else knows except you, me, and apparently Cassandra. Cassandra, who's meeting with lawyers. Cassandra, who's about to make claims on David's estate. Cassandra, whose baby is going to inherit half of everything. Michael was quiet. The baby, the inheritance. Diana, I had no idea it would come to that. Well, now you know. Now we all know. David's lies are going to affect all of us, and we're all going to have to live with the consequences. What are you going to do? I don't know. Whatever the law requires, whatever I have to do to get through this. Can I help? Is there anything? No, I cut him off. There's nothing you can do. This mess is David's to own, except he's not here to own it, so I have to do it for him. I hung up before he could respond. My phone immediately started ringing. Michael calling back. But I ignored it. I turned off the phone and sat in the darkness of David's office, surrounded by the evidence of his lies and the complicity of those who'd helped him keep them. The next morning, I woke up with a hangover and a new determination. I'd spent enough time drowning in grief and betrayal. It was time to take action, to understand the full scope of what David had done and figure out how to move forward. I made coffee, took aspirin, and called Jennifer Park. I need to see all the beneficiary designations, I told her. Every insurance policy, every retirement account, everything. I need to know if David actually changed them or if he just planned to. I'm still waiting for some institutions to send the documentation, Jennifer said, but I should have most of it by end of week. Not good enough. I need it now, today. Diana, please, Jennifer. I can't sit here in limbo anymore. I need to know the full extent of what I'm dealing with. She sighed. I'll make some calls. Push harder. But you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that he did change some of them. If he'd already decided to leave, he might have taken steps to protect Cassandra and the baby financially. The thought made my stomach churn, but I forced myself to stay calm. Just find out, please. After I hung up, I did something I'd been avoiding. I looked through David's social media accounts. His Facebook was mostly professional, connections with colleagues, occasional posts about work projects or industry news. Nothing personal, nothing that would hint at a secret life. But his Instagram was different. It was private, set to show only his followers, and I'd never paid much attention to it before. David wasn't much of a social media person. At least, I'd thought he wasn't. I logged in using his saved password. His feed was sparse. Only about 24 photos over the past few years. But as I scrolled through them, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There were no photos of Cassandra. David had been too careful for that. But there were photos of places. A coffee shop in Alexandria, with the caption, Best Espresso in the DMV. A hiking trail with perfect Saturday morning. A restaurant I didn't recognize with new favorite spot. I cross-referenced the dates of these posts with David's calendar and my own memories. The coffee shop photo was posted on a Tuesday morning when David had told me he was working from home. The hiking photo was from a Saturday when he'd said he was playing golf with colleagues. The restaurant photo was from our anniversary weekend, when he'd told me he had to work late one night and I'd gone to dinner with Maureen instead. Every single photo represented a lie, a moment when David had been with Cassandra, but had told me he was somewhere else. I kept scrolling and found something else. Photos that showed partial reflections in windows or mirrors. In one coffee shop photo, I could see the faint reflection of someone sitting across from him. Long, dark hair, the shape of a woman. I zoomed in on the hiking photo. In the background, barely visible, was another hiker. Female, dark hair in a ponytail. Cassandra had been in these photos all along. David had been documenting his life with her, hiding her in plain sight, while I scrolled past these images without a second thought. The audacity of it took my breath away. He hadn't just lied about where he was. He'd posted evidence of his lies publicly, confident that I would never look closely enough to see the truth. My phone rang. Jennifer, I have the information you asked for, she said, without preamble. Are you sitting down? I sat. Tell me. David changed his life insurance beneficiary 8 weeks ago. The new beneficiary is listed as Grace May Chen, daughter, with Cassandra Winter as trustee, until Grace reaches age 25. 8 weeks ago, 2 months before he died, he'd already taken steps to cut me out. "What about the retirement accounts?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Those are more complicated. His 401k from his current employer, that requires spousal consent to change the beneficiary. Since you never signed a consent form, you're still listed as the primary beneficiary. Same with his pension. Small comfort. But," Jennifer continued, "he had 2 IRA accounts that don't require spousal consent. Those were changed 6 weeks ago. New beneficiary on both. Grace May Chen. How much? Combined? About $320,000. I did the math in my head. Life insurance, $750. IRAs, $320,000. That was over $1 million going to a baby who hadn't even been born yet, to the child of my husband's mistress." "What about the house?" I asked. "Our joint accounts?" "Those he couldn't change without your involvement. The house is jointly owned, the bank accounts are joint, the investment accounts are joint. Those all default to you as the surviving owner. So I get the house and the joint accounts, which total about $800,000, and Grace gets $1,070,000, plus whatever her share of the estate might be under Maryland inheritance law. We won't know that until the paternity test is completed and the estate goes through probate." I felt like I was being dismembered, piece by piece. Everything David and I had built together, our retirement savings, our financial security, our future, he'd given away to a woman I'd never met and a child I'd never wanted. "Diana," Jennifer's voice was gentle, "are you still there?" "I'm here. I know this is devastating, but there is some good news. The 401k and pension, those are still substantial. Combined with your own retirement accounts in the house, you're not going to be destitute. You'll be okay financially." "Financially? Yes, I'd be fine financially. But emotionally, spiritually, how did you recover from the knowledge that your husband had spent his last months systematically erasing you from his future?" "There's one more thing," Jennifer said carefully. "I found something else in David's files. A letter, addressed to you." My heart stuttered. "What?" "It's dated September 10th, 6 days before he died. He left it with his attorney. Not me, but a different attorney who specializes in divorce. The attorney contacted me this morning when he saw David's obituary. He said David had instructed him to hold the letter until the divorce was finalized, and then give it to you. But since David died before the divorce was completed, he wants to give me the letter anyway," I finished. "Yes, he says it's rightfully yours. Do you want to see it?" Did I? Did I want to read David's explanation, his justification, his goodbye? Did I want his words in my head, haunting me? But I also couldn't not read it. I needed to know. I needed to hear, in his own words, why he'd done this. "Yes," I said. "I want to see it. I can have it couriered to you this afternoon." "No, I'll come to your office. I want to read it there, with you present." I didn't trust myself to read it alone. I didn't trust what I might do. 2 hours later, I sat in Jennifer's office with a sealed envelope in front of me. It was cream-colored, expensive stationery. My name was written on the front in David's precise handwriting. "Diana." "Take your time," Jennifer said. "I'll be right here." I broke the seal and pulled out 3 pages of handwritten text. David's handwriting was neat, controlled, the writing of someone who'd thought carefully about what he wanted to say. I began to read. "Dear Diana, if you're reading this, it means I've finally told you about Cassandra. It means you know about the affair, about the baby, about my decision to end our marriage. It means I've done the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. I know you're angry. I know you're hurt. I know you probably hate me, and you have every right to. What I've done is unforgivable. I've betrayed you, lied to you, violated every promise I made when we stood together at that altar 28 years ago. But I want you to understand, not to forgive me because I don't deserve forgiveness, but just to understand why I did this. Diana, I love you. I have always loved you. You are one of the best people I have ever known. Kind, strong, brilliant, compassionate. You made me want to be better, to work harder, to build a life worthy of you. But somewhere along the way, I lost myself. I became the person you needed me to be, the person my career needed me to be, the person society expected me to be. And I woke up one day and realized I didn't know who I actually was underneath all those roles and expectations. Meeting Cassandra was never supposed to happen. I never set out to have an affair, but she saw something in me, some authentic version of myself that I'd buried under years of playing the part of the perfect husband, the successful consultant, the responsible adult. With her, I could breathe. I could be uncertain, vulnerable, real. I know that sounds like a cliché. I know it sounds like every cheating husband's excuse. And maybe it is, but it's also the truth. The pregnancy wasn't planned. When Cassandra told me she was pregnant, I had to make a choice. I could continue living a double life, lying to you, lying to her, lying to my unborn daughter. Or I could finally be honest, finally choose, finally face the consequences of what I'd done. I chose honesty. I chose to stop lying. I filed for divorce, not because I stopped loving you, but because staying married to you while loving someone else would have been the greatest lie of all. I know this will hurt you. I know you'll feel betrayed and abandoned. I know our friends will judge me. Our families will be devastated. Your life will be disrupted in ways I can't even predict. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I'm not sorry for choosing to live authentically, even if that authenticity comes at a terrible cost. I'm not sorry for wanting to be a father to my daughter, for wanting to build a life with someone who makes me feel alive. You deserve so much better than what I've given you. You deserve a partner who is fully present, fully committed, fully yours. And I haven't been that person for a long time. I hope someday you'll find someone who can love you the way you deserve to be loved, someone who doesn't have to lose themselves to be with you. I've made arrangements to ensure you're taken care of financially. The house is yours. The joint accounts are yours. Your retirement is secure. I've set aside money for Grace's future, but I'm not leaving you destitute. You'll be okay, more than okay. You're strong enough to build a new life, to find new happiness, to become whoever you want to be without the weight of our marriage holding you back. Thank you for 28 years. Thank you for believing in me, supporting me, loving me. You gave me the foundation I needed to become the man I am today, even if that man has made choices you can't understand. I wish you nothing but peace, happiness, and a future brighter than the past we shared. With love and regret, David. I read the letter twice, then a third time, and with each reading, my emotions shifted from grief to anger to something I couldn't quite name. He'd written this as if he were the hero of the story, the man bravely choosing authenticity over comfortable lies, the tragic figure torn between two loves, forced to make an impossible choice. He'd written about losing himself, about finding freedom with Cassandra, about living authentically, as if our entire marriage had been a prison he'd bravely escaped. He'd thanked me for 28 years, as if they'd been a gift I'd given him, rather than a life we'd built together. And he'd wished me happiness in my future, as if his leaving was actually a favor he was doing for me, as if I should be grateful he was setting me free. The narcissism of it, the self-centered, self-justifying rationalization, took my breath away. "Diana," Jennifer's voice pulled me back to the present. "Are you okay?" I looked up at her, and I realized I was smiling. Not a happy smile. A bitter, knowing smile. "He really believed it," I said. "He really believed he was the victim here, that he was being brave and authentic by destroying our marriage. People tell themselves stories to justify their choices," Jennifer said carefully. "He says he set aside money for me, that he's not leaving me destitute." I laughed, and it sounded slightly unhinged. How generous, how thoughtful. My husband had an affair for 5 years, got his mistress pregnant, changed his life insurance to benefit his illegitimate daughter, and I should be grateful that he left me with the joint accounts and the house. "Diana, you know what the worst part is?" I interrupted. "He never once asked me if I was happy, if I was fulfilled, if I needed something different from our marriage. He just assumed that because I seemed content, because I didn't complain, I must have been perfectly satisfied with the status quo." I stood up, pacing Jennifer's office. What if I was lost too? What if I also felt like I was playing a role? The perfect wife, the successful administrator, the woman who didn't need children because her career was enough. What if I also wanted permission to be messy and uncertain and real? "Did you," Jennifer asked gently, "feel that way?" I stopped pacing. "I don't know. I never let myself think about it. I was too busy being the person David needed me to be. The stable one, the reliable one, the one who kept everything running smoothly so he could focus on his career." It was true. I'd spent 28 years being David's support system. I'd moved cities for his job promotions. I'd entertained his colleagues. I'd managed our household so he didn't have to think about mundane details like grocery shopping or bill paying. I'd made myself smaller and quieter so he could shine brighter, and he'd left me anyway, for a younger woman who made him feel alive. "I think," I said slowly, "I've been lying to myself too. Not the way David lied to me, but lying nonetheless. Pretending I was happy when I was actually just comfortable. Pretending our marriage was fulfilling when it was actually just functional." Jennifer watched me carefully. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe David did me a favor. Not by having an affair, that's still unforgivable, but by forcing me to see that our marriage wasn't as perfect as I'd convinced myself it was. By making me ask questions I should have asked years ago." I sat back down, feeling exhausted, but also strangely lighter. "I'm not going to fight Cassandra," I said. "Not over the money, not over Grace's inheritance. The law is clear, and fighting would only drag everything out, make it uglier and more painful." "Are you sure?" Jennifer asked. "Because we could contest." "I'm sure. Let Grace have what's legally hers. Let Cassandra raise her daughter with the financial security David wanted to provide. I don't want to be the villain in their story." "What will you do?" "I'll sell the house. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I'll take my half of the estate, my retirement accounts, and I'll build a new life. Maybe I'll travel. Maybe I'll go back to nursing. Maybe I'll do something completely unexpected." I stood up, gathering the letter. "Can I keep this?" "Of course. Thank you, Jennifer, for everything. Send me the final estate paperwork when it's ready. I'll sign whatever needs to be signed." I left Jennifer's office, feeling like I was walking out of one life and into another. The betrayal still hurt. It would probably hurt for a long time, but underneath the hurt was something else. Possibility. 3 weeks later, I called Cassandra. She answered cautiously. "Diana, I want to meet. One more time. Can you come to the park again? Same place. Yes. When? Tomorrow. 2 p.m. I'll be there. I spent the evening preparing what I wanted to say. I'd spent the past 3 weeks in therapy, processing everything that had happened. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to David, thank God, had helped me see that I had a choice in how this story ended. I could be consumed by bitterness and anger, or I could choose something different. The next afternoon, I arrived at Riverside Park with a folder under my arm. Cassandra was already there, sitting on the same bench, her pregnant belly even larger now. She looked tired and scared. I sat down beside her. "Thank you for coming," I said. "Of course." She twisted her hands in her lap. "Diana, I want to say again how sorry." "Stop." I held up my hand. "I don't need more apologies. I need something else." She looked at me warily. "What?" I opened the folder and pulled out a document. "This is a settlement agreement that my attorney drew up. It acknowledges Grace as David's daughter, outlines her inheritance rights, and establishes a trust fund for her education and well-being." Cassandra's eyes widened. I don't understand." "The trust will be funded with David's life insurance money, all $750, plus his IRA accounts. It's more than Grace would get through probate, and it's available immediately, rather than after months of legal proceedings." "Why would you do this?" "Because Grace is innocent in all of this. Because she deserves to have financial security. Because it's what David wanted. And despite everything, I can honor that wish." Cassandra started crying. "I don't know what to say." "There are conditions," I continued. "The trust can only be used for Grace's education, medical expenses, and living expenses until she turns 25. After that, she gets whatever remains outright. But you cannot use this money for yourself. It's for Grace only." "I understand. And there's one more thing." I pulled out a photo album I'd made. "This is for Grace. Photos of David, his history, his family, his life. When she's old enough to ask about her father, I want her to have this. I want her to know who he was. Not just the affair, not just the mistakes, but the whole person." Cassandra took the album with shaking hands and flipped through it. Photos of David as a child, as a college student, at our wedding, on vacations, with his family, a whole life documented. "There are letters too," I said. "Letters I wrote to Grace, explaining who her father was from my perspective, the good and the bad, the truth, as much as I understand it." "Diana," Cassandra's voice broke, "why are you being so kind to us?" "Because Grace is going to grow up without a father, and that's tragic enough, without adding bitterness and legal battles to her childhood. Because you love David, and even though I hate that, I can't pretend it wasn't real. And because," I took a deep breath, "because holding on to anger would only hurt me. It wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't bring David back or make our marriage real again. It would just poison whatever future I'm trying to build." We sat in silence for a moment, both of us crying quietly. "There's something you should know," Cassandra finally said, "about David, about the end." I looked at her. "The day he died," she continued, "he called me that morning. He said he was nervous about telling you that weekend, but he was ready. He said he'd been carrying the weight of his lies for so long that finally, being honest felt like taking off armor he'd been wearing for years." She wiped her eyes. "He said the thing he regretted most wasn't falling in love with me. It was not being brave enough to be honest sooner. He said if he'd told you the truth a year ago or 2 years ago, maybe there could have been less pain. Maybe you could have both moved on and rebuilt your lives sooner. That's very convenient wisdom from a dead man, I said, but there was no heat in my words. I know, but I think it was real. I think he really did plan to tell you everything. I think he died trying to find the courage to be honest. I thought about that. About David spending his last morning working up the nerve to destroy our marriage. About him dying before he could deliver the blow. Was that karma, cosmic justice, or just tragic timing? Diana, Cassandra said quietly, I need to tell you something else. Something I should have told you at the beginning, but I was too scared. My stomach tightened. What? I'm not keeping Grace. The words hung in the air like a bomb. What? I repeated. I'm giving her up for adoption. I've already contacted an agency, a family in Virginia, a couple who've been trying to have children for years. They're going to adopt her. I stared at her, my mind reeling. But you said, you told me David wanted to be her father, that you were keeping her. I was. I meant to. But after David died, I realized. She took a shaky breath. I realized I was only having this baby because David wanted her, because he was excited about being a father, because I thought it would make him leave you faster. But without him, I don't want to be a mother. I'm not ready. I'm only 29 years old. I have student loans and a small apartment and a job that barely covers my expenses. I can't raise a child alone. I don't want to. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. Does your lawyer know? Yes, I told her last week. That's why I was so willing to cooperate with the estate settlement, because I knew I wasn't going to be Grace's mother anyway. The adoptive parents will be. They're wonderful people, stable, loving, desperate for a baby. And the trust fund. It should go with Grace to her adoptive family, if you're still willing, if the settlement still stands. My mind was racing. Grace wasn't going to be Cassandra's daughter. She was going to be raised by strangers. David's child would grow up never knowing she was David's child. Will you tell her? I asked. When she's older? Will the adoptive parents tell her about David? It's an open adoption. They know the full story. About David, about me, about everything. They said they'll tell her when she's old enough to understand. She'll know who her biological father was. And the photo album? The letters? I'll give them to the adoptive parents. They can give them to Grace when the time is right. I sat back, trying to process this new information. Cassandra wasn't keeping Grace. David's daughter would be raised by adoptive parents who would tell her the truth someday. It was strange, anticlimactic. I'd built up this narrative in my head of David's illegitimate daughter growing up as a constant reminder of his betrayal, of having to navigate shared inheritance and uncomfortable family connections. But that wasn't going to happen. Grace would be adopted. She would have a different last name, different parents, a different life. She would know about David someday, but he would be a biological fact rather than a daily presence. I don't know what to say, I finally admitted. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. The settlement, the trust fund. It's incredibly generous, and I want to make sure it goes to Grace's future, wherever that future takes her. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then I asked the question I'd been wondering. Do you regret it? The affair? Cassandra thought for a moment. I regret hurting you. I regret the lies. I regret thinking I could build happiness on someone else's pain. She looked at me directly. But I don't regret loving David, even knowing how it ended, even knowing the cost. I can't regret the time we had together. I nodded slowly. I understood that, even though I hated it. What will you do now? I asked. After Grace is born? I'm moving. My company has an office in Seattle. I've requested a transfer. After the adoption is finalized, I'm starting over. New city, new life, clean slate. That sounds wise. What about you? Same, actually. New city, new life. I'm selling the house. Maybe moving to the coast. Maybe going back to school. I don't know yet. But I know I can't stay here. Living in the house David and I shared. Walking past the places we used to go. Pretending I can just resume my old life. Cassandra nodded. Fresh starts for both of us then. Yes. We stood up simultaneously. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Two women whose lives had been irreversibly changed by one man's choices. Then, impulsively, I held out my hand. Cassandra stared at it for a moment, then took it. We shook hands formally, like business partners completing a transaction. I hope your new life is everything you want it to be, I said. I hope the same for you. We parted ways then. I watched her walk to her car, her pregnant belly making her movements slow and careful. Then I walked to my own car and drove home. I'm writing this from a small cottage in Bar Harbor, Maine. It's nothing like the house David and I shared. It's tiny, drafty, and the kitchen is barely functional. But it has a view of the ocean. And every morning I wake up to the sound of waves, and it feels like breathing. For the first time in years. I sold the Maryland house 3 months after David's funeral. I sold most of the furniture too, keeping only the things that meant something to me personally. Not to us as a couple, but to me as an individual. My grandmother's china, my nursing school diploma, the painting I bought on a solo trip to Santa Fe 5 years ago. I quit my job as hospital administrator and went back to clinical nursing, but part-time and on my own terms. I work 3 days a week at the local hospital here, and I spend the rest of my time reading, walking, learning to paint, and figuring out who Diana is when she's not someone's wife. Maureen visits once a month. My mother came for 2 weeks and fussed over my cottage, before finally admitting it was charming, its own way. I've made friends with my neighbors, a retired couple who've lived here for 40 years and seem amused by my city girl ignorance of coastal living. I haven't dated anyone. I'm not sure I want to. For now, I'm content being alone, discovering what I actually like rather than what I thought I should like. Grace was born on March 12th, 3 days early. Cassandra texted me a single photo, a tiny baby with David's nose and dark hair. Cassandra wrote, "She's healthy. Her new parents are overjoyed. Thank you for everything. The trust fund is established in Grace's name. When she turns 18, she'll receive a letter explaining where the money came from and who her biological father was. Until then, she's Grace Morrison, daughter of John and Sarah Morrison, with no legal connection to me or to David. I think about her sometimes. I wonder if she'll look like David as she grows up, if she'll have his mannerisms, his intelligence, his charm. I wonder if her adoptive parents will show her the photo album I made, if she'll be curious about the man who contributed to her existence. But mostly, I try not to wonder. Grace is not my child, not my responsibility, not my connection to David. She's her own person, living her own life. I also think about David, but less frequently now and with less pain. The therapist says that's normal, that grief and anger both fade with time and distance. I don't hate him anymore. I don't love him either. He's become a character in a story I used to live, someone I knew once, but don't entirely recognize now. I found his letter again last week while unpacking boxes I'd been avoiding. I read it once more, and this time I felt something close to pity. David had been so convinced he was being authentic, choosing freedom, living his truth. But really, he was just running from his responsibilities, from his choices, from the life he'd built brick by brick over 28 years. Authenticity isn't about abandoning the people who love you. It's about being honest enough to work through difficulties, brave enough to communicate needs, strong enough to build something real rather than escaping into something easy. David never learned that. He died thinking he was being courageous, when really he was taking the coward's way out. But I've learned it. I've learned that starting over is terrifying, but possible, that you can lose everything you thought defined you and discover you're still standing. That betrayal can destroy you, or it can crack you open and let the light in. I chose the light. My phone buzzes. A text from Maureen. Coming up this weekend. Bringing wine and gossip. Prepare yourself. I smile and text back. Can't wait. Then I pour myself tea, walk out to my tiny porch, and watch the sun set over the ocean. The sky turns orange and pink and purple, colors bleeding into each other like watercolors running together on canvas. It's beautiful, imperfect, real, and for the first time in a long time, so am I.